He's Tony. I'm Mike. We're here to watch the world burn. This episode 44, 1957's The Sun Also Rises. This is an adaptation of Ernest Hemingway's 1926 novel of the same name, directed by Henry King. The film is filmed mostly on location in France, Spain, and in Mexico. It stars Tyrone Power as Jake Barnes. It has Ava Gardner as Lady Brett Ashley, Mel Ferrer as Robert Collin, Errol Flynn as Mike Campbell, and Eddie Albert as Bill Girton.
Yep. And that's the main cast. There's one other major character in the film, and that's the Matador. And this was a film that was produced by David Zanuck, and this was after he had left 20th Century Fox and set up his own production company. But it was still distributed by 20th Century Fox. So he had not severed the relationship with him completely. But Zanuck is a legend in film. And at this point, this was Tyrone Power's second to last film before he passed away?
Second or third to last. Yeah. It was getting close.
Yeah. So he was 44 in this. He died the following year. This was done in 57. He died in 58. He died of a massive heart attack at 44 because of a congenital birth defect and heavy smoking. And by heavy smoking, 3 to 4 packs a day.
Yeah. I mean, that wasn't a common back in the day.
No.
You know, where people just chain smoke one after another and then have their beverage in their hand too. Yeah. Alcoholic, of course. It was just a thing he did, and it wasn't surprising. A lot of people died off in their 50s, 60s. It wasn't very often somebody actually broke past the 70s. I mean, really, probably about the mid-late 50s when people kicked the bucket.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's a hard party in life. I mean, if you're chain smoking every day, one after another, and drinking from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed.
Yeah, try to call him before lunch because he soused. He soused after lunch. That was a thing back in the day.
Yeah.
So I mean, they even talk about it. If you've watched Mad Men, they actually talk about that a little bit about some of the employees that are just no good after lunch, and it's because they start drinking when they get into the office, and lunchtime comes around and they have their 3 martini special, and then the next thing you know, they're just shit faced for the remainder of the day.
Yeah.
So,
but this went through some. I wouldn't say issues during pre-production, but they tried going through multiple castings and people couldn't make it either because of prior commitments or turn shit down. They tried to get, I think Gregory Peck won the role.
Well, it was originally supposed to be done by RKO.
Yeah.
And then RKO sold the rights, and then they were putting together a new cast, and then the rights were resold again.
Yeah.
And that's how it wound up with the cast that it has, and the director and Zanuck being the basically the guy steering the ship. This is also a guy that he knew how to make big movies, but he also knew how to deal with A-list talent too. And then the flip side of that, because this was not a cheap film for them to make. It was all shot.
No, it was $3.5 million.
Yeah, well, this was back when you shot a color film, you had 3 strips of color that you ran through the camera simultaneously. Yeah. So that's why it still looks beautiful today. The colors on this, the restoration on this film are absolutely gorgeous on it. But then to top it all off, they did shoot in France, they did shoot in Spain, they did shoot in Mexico. So a lot of location, and for a fairly decent sized cast in this one.
One thing I couldn't find what the box office was on it.
I have no idea.
So I don't know how well this thing did. I don't think it did that well because it didn't get that great a reception on it. Because Ernest Hemingway walked out 25 minutes into it.
So there's some folks that say that he never watched the film.
Well, he never watched it all the way through. He watched 25 minutes of it.
Well, the funny thing is that from the script that they wrote, they had the initial draft of the film. They gave it to Ernest Hemingway. He rewrote portions of it. They doctored it, put it together. They sent him back it. He had more notes that he gave them. They followed all of those notes. 60% of the dialogue was straight from the book. that this was adapting. And when Ernest Hemingway when he shit-talked the film, David Zanuck basically said maybe he should go back and reread his book because this is all his story. You know, we did not do anything to it like he's claiming that we did.
Yeah.
And speaking of the story,
I never read the book.
It's Ernest Hemingway. He's a fatalist. He's very minimalist as a writer in that he tries to get stuff across in as few words as possible, and he doesn't do like big long paragraphs about a character's motive. He lets the character represent themselves, and a lot of the time it's through dialogue or through action that's being described. He doesn't go into that like, you know, third party omnipotent voice that's telling you, and that's when she was thinking about this, the time that they had. No, he doesn't do any of that shit.
Well, let's turn to the plot, and then after that, you can tell me if you read the book, then how this compares to the book, and then we'll get thoughts.
Just to cut to the chase on this one. It's a fair representation, but the book, I think, reads better than the movie watches. The other thing is that in the book, there's a lot of stuff that they did to the movie that they had to cut out because of the movie. The code that at the time.
The Hays Code.
The Hays Code. Yeah. And here's the thing. The film starts off, and our main character, he is a reporter in Paris. He's been there since after the war ended.
Who's Jake?
Yeah, thank you, Jake. He's there. He's decided that he's going to stay in Paris. He doesn't want to go back to America, and he's kind of hiding a bit of a secret in that he stepped on a landmine, and while he regained the use of his leg, it blew his privates off.
Yes, I could be worse off. I could be dead.
They don't say that. They just say that he's impotent.
Yes, and that would be the Hays Code action, because no one wants to think about someone that has had their bits blown off. But we're introduced to Lady Brett. Lady Brett, and Lady Brett was a nurse during the war, and essentially she helped nurse him back to health. They fell in love, but they've never been able to consummate it, and so he's basically avoiding relationships because he just doesn't feel like a man. And that's kind of like one of the big themes of this is masculinity and what defines it, if you're supposed to be a war hero at the end of it all.
That never comes across in the movie.
So, well, it does, but it's in a very downplayed way, because you have basically four different characters.
We'll keep going with the plot.
Well, I was going to say, plot-wise, they run into each other. Jake's friend, Robert, has basically fallen head over heels for Lady Brett, and Lady Brett is engaged to Errol Flynn's character, and Eddie Albert is Jake's friend who's just along for the ride, and they decide they're going to go to Spain to watch the bullfights, and they're going to make a thing of it. They're going to go and have a good time and run with the bulls and watch the bullfights, and basically it's a character study, and it's all about the relationships of these people and how it all plays out.
Yeah, so while they're at the bullfights, Lady Brett becomes enamored with the bullfighter, Romero. Yeah. Or Romeo, however you want to pronounce it. I think they pronounce it Romero.
Yeah, it's Romero. One. Yeah.
So anyway, so you got Jake, that's her buddy, Brett's buddy, and then you got Mike, who's there. Isn't Mike?
Mike is the fiance.
Mike the fiance.
Yeah.
Robert, who she was just fucking like a week or two prior to that.
You know, you're in an awful good mood. Something must have happened. I'm not so sure I don't like you better when you're unhappy.
Oh, yeah. They were fucking.
I was gonna say, there was the girl in Paris. There was the girl in Paris that he was seeing, and then he saw her.
He dumped her.
Yeah, he dumped her.
He was dumped her before he saw Lady Brett.
Robert, I'd like to check my head.
All right, go on and check it.
So they had a tryst, I'll say. I
basically means they were fucking.
Well, yeah, and then she was like, "Yeah, I'm done. Thanks, bye-bye." But he was all like, "No, you're the one. You're the love of my life."
Oh, he was clingy.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
And it comes across that way. And weirdly, it comes across genuine. It doesn't feel hammy or forced.
No.
It's over the top. But I've seen this play out.
Yeah, it's believable.
It's completely believable. And it's like everywhere she goes, he's there. And even when she's like going to avoid him, he shows up.
Yeah.
And he like just tries to like weasel his way into everything that she's doing all the time. And when they go to the bullfights, like her fiance is right there, and he sits down right next to her.
Right. Are those the bulls?
And so Mike has to sit a row up, and Mike starts hurling the insults back, and that shit is hilarious.
Yeah. It's
that
like,
whole
yeah,
time.
do you know when you're not wanted?
So yeah,
Like, you're not wanted here. Just go the f away.
and
But yet, Brett covers for Robert too, so she's a fucking enabler.
yes, she's absolutely an enabler. She wants the attention, but she doesn't want the relationship that goes along with it. And then alternatively, Mike, who's a great guy, and Errol Flynn plays the shit out of him. I mean,
Yes, he
Errol
does.
Flynn is so good in this movie. He kind of makes this film, to be honest.
He does.
Not very good for a bankrupt.
Bankrupt? Mm-hmm. How'd that happen to you?
Two ways, gradually and suddenly. However, don't you think it's a rather gloomy subject?
He's a scene stealer.
Yes, and there's the scene where they're in the pen with the bulls, and he pulls out the check and he says,
Boy,
What's that?
it's a personal check of mine, old boy. It's bounced 3 times. I was wondering if it could possibly have an effect on that animal.
What's your card on it?
I shall.
So during the whole bit in the pen with the bulls, where all the guys are down there trying to prove how fearless they are by being in there with the bulls, he's got his check. He says that it'll ward off the bulls because he knows it's bounced 3 times already. And while they actually like do get in there and do have their little brush with the bull,
Oh, ole!
he drops the check, and the whole bit where they're trying to find the check on the stadium floor is hilarious. I love everything about that whole sequence. And Eddie Albert plays the buddy perfectly. And he not just Mike's buddy, he is Jake's buddy as well. And he plays it right. It never feels over the top. It never feels forced. At no point are you ever reminded that he was on Green Acres through the whole thing.
That's how I recognize him from.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. But Lady Brett, she falls hard for Mara.
You fight tomorrow, hmm?
Si, but not with Alcapeno. He was hurt today at Madrid. Did you hear?
No. Badly?
No, it was here. Nothing.
Mad?
You tell fortunes?
Sometimes.
She casts her line in, reels him in, and this causes a huge explosion in all of their relationships.
Yeah.
Robert is offended that she did that, and Mike is obviously heartbroken because his fiance, he knows that she banged the bullfighter. Jake is just kind of like, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
I've seen this shit play out too many times, and if this is who you are, I don't want anything to do with you. And Eddie Albert is there, and he's just kind of like, I got my boys back. Rose So all these relationships explode. Robert like snaps out of it finally at the end, and he just decides that he's going to go back to the girl that he dumped in Paris.
Francis.
Yeah. Which dick move. Then you have Mike, who
What's a dick move?
what that he like.
He
chased this chick to Spain.
Hang on. He dumped that girl before he met Brett.
They were together at that first scene. I'm not sure.
No,
on that.
he dumped her then in that scene. They were dumped.
Right after they were introduced, though, wasn't it?
But they're already on the rocks.
Yeah, well,
they're on the rocks.
Yeah, they were on the rocks. I'll give you that one. But
he dumped her then.
Yeah.
So he's free and clear in that one. Now his creepy stalkerness.
Yeah.
What have I done?
Please, you must go, Robert. Please.
I love you, Britt.
Yeah, you can't defend that. That's just whatever.
And Lady Brett decides she's not going to get married to Mike because Mike is broke. He's broke. He's broke, but he knows how to have a good time and he knows how to drink a lot.
Jake, just out of curiosity, are you drunk?
No.
See, well, I am.
Yes, he does.
So
And he's got plenty of credit wherever they're going next. I forgot where it was.
I'm absolutely fat broke, old boy.
You want some money?
No, thanks. I've got my ticket. Once I get to Nice, I'll be all right. Loads of credit there.
at the end of this, Jake and Lady Brett wind up in a... Basically, Lady Brett calls Jake and says, I've made a horrible mistake, come get me. And, he thinks, obviously, well, okay, there was an altercation. Maybe Romero got fresh. Maybe he slapped her around a bit. Something like that happened.
Yeah.
So he rushes to her rescue.
And you wired that you were in trouble. You're short of funds, is that it?
Oh, Jake, please don't. I can't take any more.
And only to find out that Lady Brett actually told Romero to get the hell out, and he was torn up about it, like he didn't see that one coming, and so she decided that he was too young for her.
Yeah, it's basically another what's Robert situation.
Yes.
Another stage 5 clinger.
Yeah.
You know.
And
yeah.
well, she wanted it though. I mean, that's all she
Well,
she
she wanted to the guy, but she didn't want to get married right away either.
Yeah.
There's the whole thing, it was like, oh, let's get married and this and that, la 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 la. She's like, whoa, put on the brakes there, buddy.
So and then at the end of it all, Jake tells her, all right, pack your things and I'll take you back to Paris. And she's like, I'm leaving everything here. Let's just go. So they get into the cab and they drive off. And at the end of it, you have that last scene where they kind of confess, yes, they're both in love with each other. He can't function and she can't function. He can't function physically and she can't function emotionally.
Yeah.
And so they're just damaged people and their lives are intertwined and they're kind of stuck with each other. And they're considered, they used a phrase, and I think this is the first time it's actually probably coined, is that this is the lost generation. These are the people that fought World War I and survived after, and their lives were changed in really difficult and complex and ways that really hadn't happened at that point, because World War I was a war that was not like other wars. And the other thing is that people would survive injuries that just years before would have killed anybody, and that's Jake's particular predicament. It's a complex.
It's fucking sad and pathetic.
Yes, it's a difficult film. It is a hard watch, and they managed to get all this across even in a film at the time with the Hays Code, because they couldn't talk about she went and had unmarried sex with this guy and then went and had unmarried sex with that guy, but it's there. You know what happened. They can't say that Jake had his bits blown off, but it's there. I mean, they did everything they could to get around the Hays Code, and this is one of those films that it's prime for a remake, and I say that because now you can tackle these topics openly and show the aftermath of this kind of shit. But I don't know, I think Hemingway's kind of gone out of vogue at this time.
I'm going to be honest with you. I was not a fan of this movie.
Yeah?
I really wasn't. And that's because the character... Lady Brett is such an unlikable character.
Yes.
And you have a thing with old movies and unlikable female leads. What's her name? In Butterfield 8. Forever Amber.
Linda Darnell and Elizabeth Taylor.
And even though it wasn't one that you had actually seen before, but this also falls in the same vein as Leave Her to Heaven.
Yeah.
Very unlikable female lead.
Gene Tierney.
Yeah, Gene Tierney. So why is that? What is your fascination with these female characters?
That is a great question. My fascination with this is someone our age and anybody younger than us. The 50s and 40s, they're always portrayed as the good old days when people were so upright and always did the right thing and looked out for that. And to actually see these glimpses where filmmakers were brave enough to actually go, no, that's all bullshit. Don't believe it for a second. These really, these mean, unmotherly, unlikable, unlovable characters they're examples of people that you would meet in your real day-to-day life. So yeah, no, they weren't all June Cleaver. There were plenty of scandalous women that did shit. These were the women that were held up as examples of what not to be.
Yeah.
And that's my fascination with it, because it's rare that you actually see a female character at this time put on film with any kind of depth or agency. So to actually see like Elizabeth Taylor, who, you know, goes out on, she's scandalous because she dates multiple men and has premarital sex, and oh no, she's lost her value because, you know, she's spoiled good. She's no good anymore. I'm fascinated that we've been lied to our entire lives, and yet the evidence that we've been lied to is all around us, but because it's an older film that younger people don't watch, it completely glossed over. We just buy the bullshit, hook, line, and sinker. But it's like, we've now watched a film from the 50s, the 60s, the 40s, the 30s, and every one of these show that, you know what? These women were capable of being scandalous and doing these things were considered scandalous. But nowadays it's like, no, these women have decided that no, they're not property. They're not something for a man. They're not the housewife. They have their own lives, and they have their own character, and it's always portrayed in a negative light. So I'm again completely fascinated by it, because it is.
Well, the flip side of that, if you're a guy and do the same thing, it's really not appropriate either.
Well, yes.
Just saying, stringing around, a bunch of people to your whim and just fucking everything in fucking sight and taking zero accountability for that stuff makes you a shitty person, no matter if you're a guy or a girl.
I'm not saying what they're doing is right or wrong. All I'm saying is that it's fascinating to me that obviously these people existed. They're based on real people. And Lady Brett, you can most definitely tell. It's someone Ernest Hemingway met pulled this shit. You can tell. It's all over this film. That there's a little too much realism to it, and a little too much, oh, I'll string this guy along and he'll pick up the bar tab and bring a band with him when we go to the next bar, and that kind of thing. And it's like,
so here's the question.
Things haven't changed all that much.
Which character was Hemingway? Do you think?
I'm actually going to say that Hemingway was probably Jake, but not in that physically infirm way. I think he had a lot of internal. He internalized a lot of it, but I don't know that he did. If I'm not mistaken, he did fight in World War I.
And now a word from our production assistant, Jordan.
Yeah, no, a little tidbit about Ernest Hemingway. He did serve in World War I. He was an ambulance driver during the war. He was hit by mortar fire during the war and injured his leg, and it would have been amputated because it was injured badly. During his time when he was recovering, he fell in love with a French nurse who ended up leaving him like a month or so before they were supposed to get married for an Italian soldier.
And that kind of really colored a lot of his writings after that. But I'm not positive on that one. I don't know Hemingway.
I can see him being the Jake kind of character. They had something together, but it just didn't work out for whatever reasons.
But he was always obsessed with the idea that of a man having to prove himself, if you will. And then it was a matter of, okay, who's he proving himself to? Is he proving himself to a woman? Is he proving himself to higher ups? Is he proving himself to business partners? Is he proving himself to a fish and trying to get it back home to the bay because he wants to prove it to the taxidermy and all the villagers, or just his prowess as a fisherman? So that's a theme that recurs in a lot of Hemingway's work. But
I could say this, just going, if this is a good example of Hemingway's writing, I don't think it's my jam.
I won't say this is a fringe example. This is the periphery. This was a very odd, different book. And this was written in 26. The war ended in 1920?
1918?
Wait, 18? 1918. All right. I'll take your word on it. So the war ended so this would have been when it's written about 5 years after the war, and then he wrote the book 4 years after that. Okay. So it's all still very fresh to him. Yeah. But yeah, no, like I said, I'm fascinated by these films that do character studies, and they're not, the upright citizens brigade, you know. So and that's kind of it. I enjoy this film because it's Tyrone Power, and he gives a really good performance. It's not his best. It's not even my favorite. Errol Flynn, however, is so great in this film. And sadly, he doesn't show up until about 45 minutes in.
Cohen, don't you know when you're not wanted? I know when I'm not wanted.
Yeah, but he steals everything
Oh,
else after this.
yeah.
I mean, but he's by far the most colorful character
Yes.
in this too.
Yes.
Short of Bill, but Bill's more the sidekick, like you're saying. He's
Yes.
just there, to be a buddy. So there's that. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, Tyrone Power. I mean, I'm gonna say this. I like Tyrone Power. I like Cornell Wilde much more.
I get you.
I think Cornell Wilde would have brought a little more to this than Tyrone Power. I don't know. I just think because we've seen him in
Leave Her to Heaven.
yeah,
And Forever Amber.
and Forever Amber, and when he's pissed off at a woman, he's pissed off at a woman. He doesn't. And I understand. Jake's trying to be more of a buddy, I guess, kind of sort of. He's kind of in that friend zone, but kind of not in the friend zone. If he had shit that worked, he wouldn't be in the friend zone.
But
so
see,
I
there's the
understand that.
question. There's the question right there. Would he or wouldn't he be? Because her pattern is she finds a man, she leads him on, she sleeps with him, and then she leaves him. So if Jake had working parts, would he have just been another one in that pattern? And is that the reason why their relationship has lasted as long as it is? Because he's physically incapable of having a sexual relationship with her.
That is a damn good question, and I didn't even, that thought never crossed my mind until you mentioned it. So,
and that is why you watch The Sun Also Rises, because it's not intended to give you answers. It is intended to make you think and ask all these questions. And I will also say this: Ava Gardner, who was a scream queen, or I'm sorry, a screen queen back in the day, not a scream queen, not Linnea Quigley, but. This is like a deep, complex role, and she plays it incredibly well.
When I think of all the hell I've put other people through, I'm paying for it all now.
So much so that it's really easy to not like her at the end of this film.
Yeah.
So
a lot of them actresses back then, again, Jean Tierney, and who was it in Forever Amber?
That was Linda Darnell.
Linda Darnell. Yeah, I think they lived those roles, and that's why they could play them so well. To a degree.
Well, being in the studio system as an actress during the 30s, 40s, and 50s, more
probably not
so
too
than
far from the
not.
mark, yeah.
I'm going to say they were drawing. I think they were probably drawing on experience, or if not direct experience, then they at least knew somebody that had.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So. But bouncing back to what you were saying earlier. It'd be nice if we kind of got back to this a little bit, and I think we do here and there.
Yeah.
But portraying real people.
Yeah. Complex character studies, in-depth exploration of who these people are and why they do what they do and what they're dealing with, and in a realistic way. And that's the other thing too. I appreciate the fact that even though Tyrone Power has this catastrophic injury, at no point does he pull the lame puppy bit. At no point is he whiny or complain. He just there's an encounter that he has early in the film where he's with a prostitute and she basically flat out asks him
What's the matter? Don't you like me?
I like you fine.
Well, what's the matter? What's wrong?
I was hurt in the war.
It's phrased more tactfully than that.
He says, I can't, it's late, I'm a working man. And she's like, yeah, I'm a working girl.
Yeah. So
I'll put the clip here.
You leaving again?
Yes, I'm a working man.
I'm a working girl.
Well, I guess we keep different hours.
Probablement. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
But yeah, no, like I said, this is one of those films that I can understand the knee-jerk reaction to not like it, because there's not a lot of likable characters in it. But this is one that the more you think about it and the more you kind of digest it, the more you get out of it. Yeah. And that's the same is true with Hemingway's writing. So, it could just be about an old man in a boat going out to catch a fish, and he catches a really big one and he's trying to get it home. But there's a lot more going on there than just that. And the same is true here. That is exactly the old man in the sea. So there's obviously more going on because they made a full-length feature film with Kirk Douglas.
and even South Park references it.
There you go.
I wrote an essay.
So
I wrote my essay. He wrote me back.
didn't know where you were going there for a second, but then it finally landed, and it just hit.
That's just what I need. There's nothing like goat's milk to prevent a hangover.
No. You can't drink that. It's not pasteurized.
There's nothing that goat can give me that I can't give her.
I guess the question is, this is not a film that I would recommend to a lot of people, but it is a film that I think people should watch once, just to get a lot of the references that are in other films and other literature about this one. And there's so much of this that, like I said, it kind of hits you. It hits a nerve because so much of it rings true, I think. So
just for my final thoughts, other than Lady Brett being a very unlikable character, they spend entirely too much time going in depth on the bullfighting and all that stuff. And while it's interesting to watch and stuff, and you learn a lot about bullfighting, it chews up way too much time. This thing they could have cut that whole bullfighting thing in half, and not lost anything. And it would have been a shorter film and a much more digestible film for me. So there's that. It's not going to be a recommend for me.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it, but I didn't really enjoy it enough to say yes, you should watch this, even though it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Which kind of sucks because I don't get me wrong, I still have an appreciation for older films, and I do appreciate a lot of stuff they did in it, especially the subject matter.
Yeah.
And how tactfully they handled it with the limitations that they had. So I gotta give respect to that. Yeah. So it's not quite for everybody. I am looking forward to whatever you recommend next for these old classic films, because again, even if it's not your jam, there's a lot of good stuff here. And we should go back and watch more of these films to get the real life, because like you say, here we are, 50s, 40s, and 30s. Real life was represented very, very well, and it's not represented today at all, hardly at all, except for, the Oscar bait shit, which even the Oscar bait shit is shit in most cases.
I was gonna say, I won't say that I will say that it tends to go to extremes at this point. It's nowhere near as relatable, I think, is what it really boils down to. And that's neither good nor bad. It's just it's all down to the filmmaker, because I mean there's some really wonderful little indie films out there that are done on a $5 million budget that are never really marketed or advertised and never land in your multiplex, but that doesn't mean that there's not great film floating around out there. Relatable film, important film, I mean, at this point, I'm a little burned out on comic book movies and big action sequences and giant monsters, and I just something that's a little bit more relatable and introspective.
I'm looking forward to return to the medium film, because it seems like one extreme or the other. It's either low budget indie, straight up character study, exaggerated stuff like you're saying, or intense film, blockbuster, multi-hundreds, thousands of millions of dollars, whatever, bullshit extravaganza. I mean, that's to find a nice happy medium with all that stuff.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. So there's only one question left to answer, and that is, Mike, what are we watching next?
I actually have the answer to this. I do. I think it's 1980. He'll correct it here if I'm wrong.
Okay.
John Landis, comedy classic, my favorite musical. You may not consider it a musical, but I do. The Blues Brothers.
Oh, well, I guess you're really up shit creek.
Ow! Christ, Jake, take it easy, man.
Now what? Oh, Jesus Christ! Ow! Jesus Christ! Ah, shit! Fuck you, bitch! Hey! Jesus Christ! Oh, you fat penguin! Ah!
This is the apology for James Belushi.
No, it's not. No. This is a movie I wanted to shoot for years. This is a movie I wanted to be our first film we reviewed together when we're actually sitting in a room together.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen. So it's going to happen now.
Fair enough. So stay tuned for that. We will catch you on episode 45 of Tony and Mike Watch the World Burn.
Actually, nope. There's going to be an addendum to that.
Oh.
Because actually in between then and now is our month of love.
Whoa.
Which we'll be shooting Jane Eyre.
Yes.
Yeah.
I get 2 picks in a row?
Well, kind of, sort of.
Kind of, sort of?
Yeah.
So.
However we'll work that out.
We'll figure it.
Yeah. But we'll see you next time.